On the 26th of October, a high-risk Ukrainian air operation targeting a critical Russian supply hub culminated in the catastrophic failure of a multi-million-dollar defensive network. The mission, which was itself defined by a cascade of system malfunctions and significant pilot improvisation, began its high-risk ingress phase at approximately 2:40 p.m. local time. A lone Ukrainian Air Force MiG-29 crossed into Russian airspace, flying at treetop level, a profile designed specifically to stay below the detection threshold of long-range surveillance radars. The aircraft was armed with two French-provided AASM or armament ASOL modular hammer precision-guided bombs. Its objective was a border guard post at Beloberiovka, which Ukrainian intelligence identified as a vital logistics and ammunition node for Russian ground positions in Ukraine. The pilot faced immediate challenges. Russian electronic warfare systems jammed the aircraft's GPS, forcing him to rely on visual flight rules and a paper map. Compounding this, dwindling fuel levels meant the mission parameters allowed only one attempt on the target. At 2:41 p.m., the mission nearly failed. Flying at approximately 650 kilometers per hour, the aircraft suffered a bird strike. A crow, converging at 180 kilometers per hour, was ingested by the left engine intake, destroying the compressor blades, spinning at 13,000 revolutions per minute and causing a catastrophic compressor stall. The severe asymmetric thrust caused the aircraft to lurch left, entering a rapid descent towards the forest. The pilot instinctively applied train procedures. Full right rudder to counter the yaw, pulling the control stick to arrest the descent and activating the engine restart switch. The aircraft's altitude plummeted from 200 meters down to 160. The automated engine restart sequence required 30 seconds, but the pilot had less than 10 seconds before ground impact. Simultaneously, the event was briefly registered by Russian air defenses. At the Klamovo Air Base, an operator monitoring a Podlet K1 low-altitude radar, designed for targets like drones and missiles, noted an intermittent contact. The operator had been tracking fleeting contacts for 2 minutes, likely the MiG-29 dipping between ridge lines and valleys. Just as the operator achieved a radar lock, the contact vanished again as a MiG-29 dropped altitude during the emergency. The lock lasted only 6 seconds, too short of a firing solution. The operator assessed the contact as an anomaly or ground clutter, dismisses another flock of cranes, and hesitated to file a report, opting to take a scheduled break. This decision, based on an incomplete radar picture, proved critical. Minutes later, at a low altitude of 140 meters, the MiG's damaged left engine reignited. The pilot synchronized the turbines and stabilized the aircraft. The damage was severe. The left engine ran rough, with a compressor efficiency estimated at only 30%. The near crash consumed critical time and fuel, dwindling the pilot's reserve from 12 minutes to just 3. A new unmapped threat appeared. High-voltage transmission cables, 60 meters above the valley. At 650 kilometers per hour, the pilot had 2 seconds to react, executing a 5G pull-up that cleared the top wire by less than 10 meters. The cable's electromagnetic field briefly disrupted the cockpit instruments. By the time the pilot pressed on, the Podlet K1 radar station was in a shift change. The intermittent contact was logged, but not actioned. The pilot reached his final checkpoint, a bend in the Desna River, 10 kilometers from the release point. With one damaged engine and fuel for only one pass, he prepared for the attack. At 2:45 p.m., reaching the initial point 50 kilometers from the target, the pilot pushed both throttles to maximum and pulled the MiG-29 into a near vertical climb. This high-risk pop-up maneuver is designed to toss the bombs on a high-arcing ballistic trajectory, allowing the aircraft to launch from outside the range of point defense systems. The physiological cost was immediate. The pilot endured 6 Gs, his G-suit inflating to squeeze his legs and abdomen. His vision grayed at 3,000 meters and narrowed to a tunnel at 5,000. By 6,500 meters, he was semi-conscious, his hand locked on the stick by muscle memory. Simultaneously, the damaged left engine vibrated violently, threatening to disintegrate. This maneuver, however, made the aircraft highly visible. The steep climb announced the MiG's presence to every air defense system within a 200-kilometer radius. As the pilot neared the release apex, the weapons interface failed. The French AASM bombs were connected to the Soviet-era MiG via a non-standard interface, reported as a locally fabricated interface. Under 6 Gs at 7,000 meters, the system's voltage regulator failed. The weapons panel displayed liaison error, connection error, leaving the bombs deaf to the fire control computer, while the pilot, struggling with oxygen deprivation, cycled backup switches. A new threat emerged. 72 kilometers away, a Russian Su-35 fighter, vectored toward the earlier radar anomaly, acquired the climbing MiG. The Russian pilot locked the target and fired an R-37M NATO AA-13 Axe-Head, a long-range hypersonic air-to-air missile. The MiG's radar warning receiver shrieked. Missile launch bearing 045, closing at 2 kilometers per second. The missile would intercept in 36 seconds. The Ukrainian pilot could not yet evade. He still had to release his payload, ignoring the failed digital interface. His right hand found the emergency pickle buttons, physical switches that bypass the fire control computer. At the 8,000-meter release point, he smashed the first button. After a 3-second delay, the first AASM bomb dropped and its rocket motor ignited. The second bomb released cleanly. Payload away, the pilot initiated a defensive maneuver. He rolled the MiG inverted and dropped into a brutal 9G split test, trading altitude for the only thing that could save him: speed. He blacked out for 2 seconds. When his vision snapped back, he was plummeting past 4,000 meters, and the R-37M was still chasing him. His countermeasures were dead. The CHARP dispenser jammed after 3 bursts, and the ECM pod, overheated from the emergency climb, shut itself off. No jamming, no decoys, no time. With nothing left, he executed the last card in the book, the notch. He rolled the jet perpendicular to the missile's path, placing the R-37M at his 3 o'clock. Instantly, his relative velocity dropped to 0 from the missile's radar perspective. The Doppler seeker, designed to ignore stationary clutter, lost him. The missile tore past 100 meters behind, failed to fuse, and detonated harmlessly as the MiG dug back to tree level. But while the pilot fought for his life, the 2 AASM bombs he had released began their own chaotic descent. They reached 8,500 meters and transitioned into ballistic fall, and immediately ran into a storm of problems. First, propulsion failure. One rocket motor had ingested microscopic ice crystals formed during climb, producing only 60% thrust. The weapon's computer predicted it would fall 2 kilometers short. Second, electronic warfare. A Russian Krasuka 4EW vehicle near Bryansk came online, dumping over a kilowatt of jamming noise into the GPS band. Both bombs lost satellite lock and dropped into backup inertial navigation, a system prone to drift. Every second, the gyros added 2 meters of error. Over 4 minutes of flight, the missed distance ballooned toward half a kilometer. Third, seeker interference. At 3,000 meters, the second bomb's infrared seeker woke up and immediately locked onto the sun sitting directly ahead. Blinded, the computer broke lock and kept searching, finding only solar glare for almost 15 seconds while INS drift worsened. Fourth, atmospheric chaos. The first bomb hit violent winds here at 5,000 meters, yawing the weapon 20 degrees and tumbling its analog gyros. It entered a slow spin, 2 revolutions per minute. Fighting to stabilize as its fins deflected to maximum, Russian air defenses tried to intervene. An S-400 battery at Klomuvo detected the tiny 0.2 square meters radar signatures and launched 2 48N6 missiles. But the intercept computer couldn't solve the geometry. These were not cruise missiles, but erratic, tumbling objects falling almost vertically. Both SAMs overshot and self-detonated. At 2,000 meters, both bombs recovered partial guidance. The first emerged from the sun's glare and its IR seeker locked onto the heat from 3 BTR-82A engines below. The second, still blind, switched to contrast-matching mode, identifying the angular rooftop of the Bela Berezovka building. Both dived nearly vertically. The final Russian defense, a Panzer S-1, locked them with radar at 8 seconds of impact, but physics made the system useless. The bombs were inside the minimum engagement range for missiles, and the 30mm autocannons couldn't elevate past 85 degrees. The bombs were falling at 87 degrees. Rounds flew behind them harmlessly. At 2:51 p.m., the first bomb hit. Its damaged gyros caused a 12-meter offset, but the shaped charge still burned sideways from every supporting wall on the north side. The building didn't collapse. It toppled like a domino block. 17 seconds later, the second bomb struck 8 meters off target, right beside the armored vehicles it had locked onto. With 1,500 liters of diesel vaporized by the explosion, a fuel air fireball reached 4,000 degrees Celsius, annihilating the entire vehicle cluster. The MiG-29, damaged, low on fuel, and barely holding together, limped back across the border into Ukrainian airspace. The mission was successful, but it was defined by cascading systems failures on both sides, malfunctioning motors, jamming, atmospheric chaos, flawed air defense logic, and a pilot improvising under lethal pressure. Ukraine succeeded because of skill and adaptability. Russia failed not due to lack of technology, but because the attack profile, a half-broken jet performing a desperate ballistic toss, was one their systems simply weren't designed to counter.